to share this new initiative that has been implemented in the hospital for the first 10 minutes or so. So, Taylor?
Thank you. I'm Taylor Wooten from the Department of Medicine, and I just wanted to bring some information, including the rationale, the evidence, and the protocol for the inpatient hallway boarding initiative. So I think we're all aware that ED crowding is a problem. It's a problem here at Erlanger. It's a problem nationally with about 90% of hospitals across the country. And ED crowding delays the triage and treatment of emergency room patients, leading to increased walkouts and decreased access to care. Additionally, ED crowding affects our patients, and really our admitted patients are the #1 cause of ED crowding. It's all of those inpatient boarders. So long ED boarding stays hurt admitted patients by leading to delays in care, and this is well documented in the literature. There's decreased compliance with sepsis bundles, delays in antibiotic administration, poor pain management, and increased errors. Additionally, there's increased length of stay. So in one large academic center, they found that length of stay increased from 5.6 days for those boarding for 2 hours or less to 8.7 days for those boarding 24 hours or more. And there are also increased mortality issues. So the same study found that all-cause mortality for the hospital stay nearly doubled in patients that boarded 12 hours or more compared to those that boarded 2 hours or less. And then additionally, there's decreased patient satisfaction. We know that patients that board in the ED for more than 2 hours usually rate us low throughout their entire hospital stay on those HCAHPS scores. So what is inpatient hallway boarding? Well, it's moving admitted patients from the ED, often from ED hallways, to inpatient hallways until inpatient beds become available. And this is an evidence-based strategy. A large academic medical center published results after 4 years of experience with this and found no increased mortality and no safety concerns. They also found that patients overwhelmingly preferred inpatient boarding to ED boarding by 85%. And this is really becoming a nationally adopted practice. In 2016, the American College of Emergency Physicians found that 20% of hospitals were doing this, and more have done it in the last 2 years. And then there have been recent articles in Health Affairs and even the Wall Street Journal. So it's really becoming an accepted practice. So here's the process that we have in place at Erlanger. So current participating units are 3,000 West Wing 3, and Northwest 9 is actually in place. And there are plans to expand to all adult med-surg units. So the nursing leaders on the unit choose 2 patients per day according to specific inclusion criteria, which we'll discuss. The patients are counted in the nursing ratio, so these are not patients above and beyond the numbers that the nurses would already care for. And the patients are either shielded by privacy screens or placed out of view. For example, in some units, the day rooms are being converted to house these patients. And these patients receive priority for the next available inpatient bed, and they're surveyed for experience and monitored for any safety events. So here's a summary of the inclusion criteria. So we're only talking about adult patients, no pediatric patients, no OB patients, and of course ICU and intermediate care excluded. So they can have no need for isolation for infectious reasons or need for a sitter, no altered mental status, no high seizure risk, and they must be ambulatory incontinent, no need for suctioning, no CPAP, they can't need oxygen more than 2 liters, they cannot have active nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea, they can't have an elevated troponin or an unstable arrhythmia, and we're not including patients admitted for end-of-life care. So I have some results to share for you that are very up-to-date as of yesterday. So far, 59 patients have participated in inpatient boarding, and the patient satisfaction scores have averaged 4.5 out of 5. And the average length of stay for these patients has been 2 hours and 18 minutes, with 66% of patients placed in inpatient beds within 3 hours and 84% within 4 hours. Additionally, we've seen a great Hawthorne effect, where there's been a significant increase in the number of discharges before 11, 2, and that should say 6 p.m. on all of these participating units. So it seems that there's increased attention paid to getting those discharge orders in early, the nurses acting on those orders, case management, everyone working together to get these patients out. And so that's a great effect and a needle that we haven't been able to move for years here at Erlanger. And then additionally, other than 2 patients leaving AMA, there have been no safety events and no near misses in boarded patients. So that's all the information that I had. I'll be happy to take any questions. Dr. Menderata is also here, as well as some of the nursing leaders are here, so we're happy to answer any questions that you may have about this process. And we should probably get you a mic, too.
With the position of the beds on MedSurg 3000 specifically, I noticed their proximity to the emergency exits there. The position of the beds on HFMU or MedSurg 3000, they're right by the fire exits. Has that been cleared by a fire marshal or anything like that? Or would there be a better place to put those beds?
So that's a great question, Sharif. Ted, can you speak, or Dr. Menderata, whoever would like to speak to that question?
So yes, every location has been carefully reviewed by Erlanger administration, and we have made our very best efforts to allow for appropriate passage of patients. So the proximity of the exit is not necessarily the determinant of safety. It's is there adequate space around them. So yes, that's been carefully vetted by Erlanger admin, and definitely we want to create a system that's safe for all patients in the entire building, and this is an example of how we can do that. So great question.
We've also looked at, if the patient wants to code like on 3000, we've identified an area like the dictation area that we could pull in and have med gases and things there. So we've kind of thought these things through as to where we could, if something arose for the issue.
To specifically address the fire marshal concern, they have been contacted by our disaster coordinator, and he's been consulted, and to my knowledge has not deemed the area as unsafe. So.
Yes, do you have a question?
Yeah. Is there anything being done about ICU overflow and ICU overcrowding in the ED?
Well, a big problem with that, I believe, and others can speak to this, is the issue with having floor beds to move the ICU patients out. So if we can increase the flow of floor patients, hopefully that alleviates some of the congestion in the ICU. Yes, Dr. Ford?
Are the patients surveyed immediately upon being placed in a room?
Great question. Let's see. Dr. Menderata?
Yes, there's patients that are surveyed within hours of being placed into a room. So the patients are identified. We have a special survey team, and they're personally surveyed by Erlanger leadership just within hours of being placed.
And the reasons that we think that patients prefer this better, obviously being in a hallway anywhere is not ideal, but in the emergency department, they see level 1 traumas come in, they see CPR in progress, it's loud, there are patients screaming, and their nursing ratio is better up on the inpatient floor than it is in the emergency department. So they're getting their orders taken care of in typically a more timely fashion. So I think all those things are coming into play. What other questions? Yes.
Are there any contraindications to putting a patient into a hallway bed, such as a C. diff infection?
Yes, that was covered with the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So we're going to be very, very mindful of any sort of patient that would not be ideal to be placed in the hallway. So we're actually following criteria that are much more conservative than national standards. And the criteria, so here we are very restrictive and meets a small proportion of our ED boarding patients. But we're going to work very carefully and stepwise with a focus on patient safety to make sure that any edits made to this is safety is first and foremost.
Any other questions? Yes.
Who actually goes through the inclusion criteria and determines if the patient's, able to go to the hallway?
So the emergency department nursing staff, as well as the floor CSL, so the nurse leaders from each department do face-to-face sign-out and make sure the inclusion criteria are met before a patient's transported or considered. Kind of an example to the rest of us of safe patient transitions of care when you do face-to-face sign-off in a patient-centric fashion.
And Shansing, do you have a question?
Yeah, with the inclusion criteria, we've actually got a patient who is nauseous and vomiting in the hallway, and also one who I've seen some requiring sitters in yellow gowns in the hallway. So I'm not sure if that's being followed or not.
Can you give me details on that?
I can't remember the exact specifications, but I've seen them in the hallways, like yellow gown and also. Well, there's one on 3000 right now who's nauseous.
Okay. I'll follow up.
Any other questions?
Is this ever a HIPAA issue with a patient in the hallway and either talking to them or trying to talk about a patient before you go in a room or if you're rounding with your team?
I think that's a great question, Megan. I think we always have to be conscious, even when we're just rounding, as a floor team in the hallway, that we're very conscious about speaking in the hall and who's around. And that's the case, in the emergency department with the boarders in the hallway and with the boarders on the floor. I think we need to make sure that we're, careful with patients' confidentiality. Any other thoughts on that?
So that's definitely a concern, and we have to just be very mindful as providers to have confidential patient discussions in private rounding areas. And in the emergency department, we discharge approximately 30% of our entire patient volume from the waiting room. So the entire evaluation takes place in a public area. And that's for 3 out of 10 patients in our emergency department right now. So that's one reason why we're a big fan of this process. And we've had, so far in the past year, 0 HIPAA complaints regarding that.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing the information. I know this came up in another meeting that we were in, Sudev. So can you share with us what is the long-term plan as we are working towards this? I mean, is this a temporary solution till we find more beds, or what is the long-term goal for this?
So the majority of institutions around the country with our patient population are already doing this and have been doing this for decades. And what we've noticed, which is consistent with national data, is that when we move a patient to a hallway, it creates tremendous amount of downstream successes. Our EVS turnaround times are decreased. Our discharges are expedited. So the patients that are placed in a hallway, the median is about 120 minutes or so. So we have a very short length of stay in the hallway. Our long-term plan is to care for our community. And with decreasing resources and increasing demands of healthcare, this might be an unfortunate reality of where we will be in the next decade of healthcare. What we hope to do, though, is use this as an example where we can work collaboratively with Erlanger to ensure patient safety and quality of care and maintain a quality educational environment for everybody in here, too.
Great. Sid, thank you all for listening. We really appreciate your support in this endeavor to try to improve flow in the hospital. If you have any concerns, if you see any patients you're concerned about or have any further questions, you can talk to myself, Dr. Menderata. This is Ted Nelson, Associate CNO for Nursing, and then Angela, you lead trauma, surgical. Yes. So you can reach out to any of us by email or in person, and we're happy to address any concerns that you have. Change is often hard, and I think this is, none of us want any patients in the hallway, but I think that we're seeing that this is a positive alternative. All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sudev and Taylor. Sure.
Thank you.
Grab some pizza before you go. All right. I think, as was the goal of the town hall meetings, it's really to show the partnership between the hospital and the educational system and how we are working together to make sure that patient care is what brings us here with the education around it. So that was one of the impetus for really starting the Resident Advisory Board. And for some of you who may be new, may not know details about it, but this was a committee that was started in June of 2017. And I will tell you that your group of resident representatives, with your help, have been very, very active, and we've got some really major changes that have occurred and are continuing to have a dialogue about to improve. And the impetus for this was really, how do we thrive at work while being educated and providing patient care? And we really approached it from a systematic way that has been shown in many institutions and nationally to work, and working on 3 aspects of cultural wellness, efficiency of practice, and personal resilience. So we had representatives from each program, and it was, how do we bring the residents who are here probably the longest compared to anybody else, and at hours when most of the leadership is not present, but you all have your eyes and ears, and how could we sort of harness that valuable information and creative ideas and make it work where we could all achieve what we are here to achieve, that is efficiency of practice and a culture of well-being. So we met initially every other month because there were so many issues, and now we meet quarterly, and we gather suggestions. And the goal for this committee, with leadership from the Dean's office and the hospital, Dr. Jan Keys is the Chief Nursing Officer who's representing the hospital, is really to connect us to the right people who can identify a systematic approach to the culture of well-being. And we really modeled it around that we were looking at keeping it in the quadruple aim, which you may be aware of and probably heard a lot of in the past few months, is how do we get better outcomes, whether that's educational or clinical, improved patient experience and clinician experience, and then really looking at access and cost. This was the learning objective that the leadership on the Resident Advisory Board came up with. The residents brought up these objectives, and they were approved by the deans and the leadership from the hospital. So really they wanted it to be an informational meeting and really talk about how do we collectively create our mission and vision, brainstorm ideas, and then cultivate that network of relationships. And this year, based on the discussions that occurred from June, the House staff and the resident body felt that they needed their own subgroup which would focus on this culture of well-being. And we have Chris Etchels from the emergency department who will head that. And then we have vice chairs with Tina and Danielle from emergency and internal medicine who were elected to that position. We have multiple members on the Resident Advisory Board. We don't have all the members listed here because of clinical duties. We request representation from each department. Our last meeting was very recently, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and these were the residents or your colleagues who represented the different departments at that meeting. So what have we done in the past over a year, about a year and 4 or 5 months? There were many issues that came up, for those of you who may remember. The first one, of course, was around education and how can we make sure that what are the basic educational needs in the accreditation programs, but also what do we do uniquely in Chattanooga to make sure that we provide a well-rounded education to our students and residents. And we had multiple discussions, and then we actually had a town hall meeting where we had Mr. Spiegel as the CEO and the dean have an open forum with the residents, and that was our first town hall meeting. Multiple issues came up regarding food and beverages, and I'm going to sort of go through this, but I'm going to count on some of the resident members who attended those meetings to fill in. So we have had meetings with the leadership of the hospital, and their names are listed up there. But the issues to food was, a simple issue came up, is where do we provide food for the emergency medicine department when they are doing shift work and they don't have access to the cafeteria or the lounge, especially after hours. And then the other issue regarding food was the quality of food, the amount of food, who provides the food in the handoff areas or the lounges. Those were two major issues. I think the ER residents are here. Any of them in the audience? I know Dr. Mandriata was just here, but we, in the past probably 6 months or so now, we have a place for food, and they get regular food delivered to their residency area, and they have access to food. The way we handled providing food to each of the areas, for whether it was the medicine handoff area or the family medicine or others, was each department was going to work with their coordinator and a resident representative and decide the frequency of ordering of the food, what type of food, and the parameters of the budget were given to each department specifically. So you all had control and knowledge of what was being ordered. The other aspect for food, Matt, do you want to say something more about the recent discussion on food? And Pam, if you want to grab a mic too.
I think the largest thing is it isn't just access, it's affordability, and that's what we're trying to tackle, because Sodexo, unfortunately, the contract's set to 2025, so what you're experiencing right now is what you're going to pay until 2025. There are other ideas that we're trying to explore, and how do we get people food of our age that we want to pay for, which is, $12 for lunch is pretty expensive, but if you're here for, some of you guys are here for 3 shifts some days, and it could be up to 5 meals. And real meals are ones that, where you're like you were when you were in high school again, and those can be up to $40 a day. So we're trying to find out ways to just cut down. I think we may find some loopholes this year, but that's what your leadership's doing for you. If you have any suggestions, any ideas, even down to like a food truck idea that you can come up with, please let your representatives know. They were just up on the slide up here.
And we are collecting the updated representatives, and if you have any suggestions in your department or want to be, please talk to your departmental leadership and then let Ms. Scott know. So clear it with your departmental leadership and then let us know.
And I think I could start off with security too. That was I think our initiative, in that we had some of the especially some of the female members and even myself at night that have felt unsafe at the hours that we come in. They're not during shift change when security guards are around, and now that we're expanding to multiple parking lots, I think there were 7 in all, and some are lit, some are unlit, some have cars, some don't, some you walk through, some you park in. Anyways, the long story short is that we need to be able to feel safe going from one place to another at odd hours that don't coincide with shift changes where security personnel are present. So we're trying to brainstorm that, and I think we have a member of the security staff at the upper level here who is going to work with us through subcommittees. And once again, if you have any issues with this or any thoughts, please talk to your representatives. He's all the way in the back. Yeah.
Okay, from our last meeting, we talked about staffing for security, and on the outside of the hospital, on the 7 parking lots, we have 2 security officers in vehicles that try to round those areas, and they stay pretty busy on calls coming back inside the hospital. So there's a lot of times they're not available. They're running here and there. We have to go down to Southside and Dotson and things like that and lock up. And so I think that's where we're at with staffing, is we need some more security officers.
Yeah, and especially as one thing I didn't know was how many people need jumps at night for their car, and how that pulls away the folks that could help us while they're doing that. So I'd actually thought of even if we could have like a car jumping voluntary auxiliary staff people helping do that. That would bring y'all to the forefront instead of.
Right. One of those vehicles spends a lot of time doing customer service, calls in the garage, boosting vehicles, transporting elderly patients around, trying to find their lost vehicle. So I've got one vehicle that pretty much just stays in the garages and doesn't even get out at all. So then I'm left with one vehicle outside to patrol all that area.
So I think if you have any suggestions or talk to the residents within your programs and can come with something, if there's something that you really are having an issue with, well, such as security, or that you feel uncomfortable as situations develop as more people are forced to park off the actual hospital grounds, please let us know, because this is very important to this subcommittee. And identifying, we won't know how to fix it unless we identify what needs to be fixed.
My name is Mickey Melita. I'm the Director of Parking and Transportation Services here at Erlanger. Every resident should be parking in the garage. If you're third year or above, you go down to the basement. Does everybody have a proximity card or code? You should be able to park on third or fourth level of the parking garage during the day, and if you come in at night, your card will get you in the garage. And actually, at nighttime and on weekends, the garage is quite empty. I can turn a semi around in there, so you can probably don't have to go all the way to the third floor. If you can go to the second floor level there. If you do not have your code or proximity card, you need to email Baron Peterson and get that squared away for you. It's just your card like you get in the doors. It'll get you into the garage at night. No one, not even any employee, physician, anybody, should be on the outside lots after 9 p.m. at night. Does anybody have any questions about their parking?
Sometimes I think part of the problem is that maybe you came in at 3 and now you're leaving at 1 in the morning and you parked in an outside lot.
I'd rather, because our issue is not, we're getting ready to move. We got everybody placed and we have to move people back in the garage. This is the first group. They should have access to the garage 24/7. I will tell you that if you do work first shift between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m., we just contracted with an outside company that's going to be out there in golf carts. It'll be a little bit more security. But if they catch you parking on ground 1 or 2, they will write you an outside ticket. And I believe it's $50, just like Republic parking. So if you come in between that 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, you're going to need to go to the third or fourth level. In the evening time and the weekend, there's really no issue with that. Well, these are young people that are going to be great doctors here one day, and I'm getting older, and I might fall out, and, the parking's been kind of rough. It's been kind of rough the last few days or years with the parking, and I'm scared to go to the ED. I might have a nurse try to not help me out of there and just whack me, but that's what you're there for. But Mickey Melita, email me or Baron Peterson, and we'll make sure that you get in the garage. And I think, Phil, anytime you leave, whether you're going to the garage, outside lot, wherever you're going, it's always good to walk in with 1 or 2 people, not go alone.
Thank you. I think other 2 issues that you may have noticed is that they're really bringing more secure keypads on the doors, more areas which are getting secured in the hospital, and they're also aiming to get more cameras to improve the security. So those are 2 other areas. Another area about security that was brought up by the residents was the crosswalk before you enter the garage. I think there is a lot of problem with traffic over there, and especially during the mornings, and they're looking at trying to sort of make it either with lights or a crosswalk so that it forces people to stop or be aware, and you may not hit a pedestrian on.
Dr. Panda, we painted them this weekend.
Okay, see, it
Did
got
anybody
done.
see them? They're very bright yellow with glass beads in them. But yeah, if you're walking across crosswalk, there's a couple of physicians that have been here 30 years. They will run over you if you're not real careful. But all the crosswalks in the back of the hospital around the garage have been repainted Sunday, high fluorescent yellow, and there's also new signage with a flashing light. And we're going to be painting the one going across from the ED, the one that looks like a Z, and then out by the West Wing Valet, so they'll all be painted bright yellow.
Awesome. So this is the power you have, guys. I think if we have the conversation, we bring up the problems, I think we're all willing to work together for the same goal. So thank you. That's news to us. Yep. Thanks a lot. Do you all have any other questions for security or parking? Before, yes.
No, you're correct, and they're not going to be removed. You're going to have to go over them very slow.
Can they reduce them?
No. If those speed ramps are not to get you to slow down, those are people that actually take out gates. Those equipment's about $12,000 a piece, and I've had about 6 of them destroyed. No doctors, no residents. Usually, well, there's nurses in here. I don't know who to blame, but somebody hits them and whacks them, and there's bollards in front of them. I've had to replace the bollards. Those are you just got to go piggybacking. Everybody in this room say you have no idea what piggybacking is. That means you forgot your badge, you can't get out of the garage, you tailgate somebody, and you follow them out. Speed humps keep you from doing that. The only downside to getting in and out of the garage, guys, the only downside, if you leave this badge at home, you're not going to be able to get in. And I know that can be issues sometimes, but it's just Dr. Panda, we're just going to get used to it. I keep mine in my truck, my car, and I have it. You have to have that proxy reader to get in. If for some reason you didn't and you're coming here for a surgery or an emergency, there's a little silver button, you hit it, and one of the dispatchers, what, can I help you? I'm a physician, open the gate. They know to pop them straight up. But don't make that a practice, okay?
Thank you.
Every physician in the hospital are the only people that have a proxy card reader and a code. We can do that for the residents. Now, I want to be very serious here, okay? Just met with Dr. Jackson last week. If you have, raise your hand if you have an access code. If you share that code with someone else, you might as well give them your social security number and your bank account information. We turned off 12 doctors last week that their code's been compromised, meaning if this physician goes into surgery and takes meds and he didn't do it, when the TBI and the FBI come to investigate narcotics theft, guess whose code was the last one entered? And you're going to have a conversation. Do not share your code with anyone, not your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, and God knows not EVS. There's a very prominent doctor. His card was used 383 times in 1 hour. If you share your code and something goes wrong, you're going to be questioned and you're going to be on the hook. If you think your code has been compromised or you know it's been compromised because you gave it to someone, you need to contact me immediately and give you a new one. The problems with codes, people forget them, so they write them on the back of their ID badge. Well, if you don't have your ID badge, now you don't remember your code. So, we'll give you both. So if you come down in the middle of the night and you just run out and your badge is not the most prominent thing on your mind, we'll give you both. And I just said it 3 times. Do not give your code to anybody. We met with the, what's Dr. Jackson's committee? The medical committee.
Medical executive committee.
Medical executive, and, we met with corporate compliance. It is danger. It is your name that hit that box. So we got amnesty for the next week. So if you feel like you gave your code to somebody or it's stolen, or you just think somebody else has it, come down, we'll kill it. And we try to catch them all, but I won't call the dean or anybody and say, hey, Dr. So-and-so gave us code. No, I'm just going to just change it for you so we can move forward with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming too. So, by the way, I didn't do due service. This is Dr. Matthew Epps, the Chief Resident for Plastic Surgery, and he is the spokesperson today representing the leadership that was there in the last Resident Advisory Board meeting. The next item that was actually a picture that was shared amongst the Resident Advisory Board members of a person carrying, how many pages were there, 7 or 8? And that was a problem that was identified as, you carry pagers, you have text messages. In this era of communication, what can we do to streamline that process and make it manageable? Because when you are in the night by yourself and have so many calls to answer. And the other issue with communication was on the emails, and that really was something that impacted the students more than the residents, because the students cannot access their UT email at Erlanger. So we are working on that, and then also Google Docs. What is the role for that? And a lot of people work on Google Docs. So Matthew, do you want to update where we are? Thank you.
I just had a quick question. How many of you are comfortable using Tiger Text? How many use Tiger Text every day? Okay, so it's about, 60% of people. How many people rely only on their pager? It's really about 100% if you're getting, okay. So what we're trying to do is, this whole committee's wellness committee, and it's the brilliance of this is that it's a forum in which the residents have never been given this much ability to say or do or change. Ever. I've never been involved. The only reason I'm up here is because I'm probably the misfortune of being the oldest person at this hospital. So I've seen a lot. I've stuck around. They put me up here. I've also have a lot of thoughts, and I don't usually just keep them to myself. So if you have any problems, if you have any suggestions for anything that we're talking about here, please, you can find me. You can find any of the other members, and we'll bring them up. But it started out as wellness, and I thought to myself with pagers that I've seen people with 3 pagers. We almost had to have 3 pagers last May. So I found out about AMION, which was our paging system that the hospital had for a year and a half, and Pat Eller had been entering things into for a year and a half. And we said, well, can we use that? And that's what they were using. And I said, sure. So we went and found this out as my own quality improvement project, but we found it very helpful in plastics. But what I noticed was that in just the thought of having 3 pagers, I pictured the poor intern carrying 4 of them. And I said, what if one of those goes off, much less all 4 go off? Is the anxiety that creates among residents? Well, nowadays we're trying to find ways to limit the anxiety. We're all working harder. We're seeing more patients. We may not live in the hospital for 2 days straight, but our volume is high, and we have to learn to work smarter, not harder, and more with more health and wellness. So somehow this, talking about pagers, came out of the wellness committee, which is part of wellness. If you have any thoughts or any ideas, any of you are wizards at technology. I was born in '79. When I grew up, you had a Nintendo with 2 buttons on it, and I really can't. I'm not a technology person, but I can help at least facilitate the conversation with the right people, or even get you with the right people. If anybody in the crowd has anyone, please bring them up to your folks in your residency, the representatives, and you're always welcome to our meeting. I don't think I was even on the committee. I just showed up, and they said come back. So. Seriously, the committee is powered with the right people. You have the deans that sit on it. You're never going to have this voice, but what's cool is it's protected. You're not in front of the hospital administration unless we bring them in there, and that's just for collegiality to try to improve these projects. So you can safely talk about anything. But once again, what we're trying to do is consolidate the pagers down to Tiger Text. Since you're using Tiger Text and you're also answering up to 3 pagers or 14 if you're on call in medicine on the weekend, it's crazy. It creates a anxiety, lack of patient care that is so many systems deep that we just started unraveling it yesterday, and we realized we have to get a specialist to come in, called a lean person, to come and figure out how do you take the redundancy out of the system and make it more efficient. And I think Tiger Text is probably the best system to do that. And if you're comfortable now, it'll be fine for us because we can proceed ahead. If you have any suggestions or other programs, there are apparently a bunch of them. Please let us know. I'm open to anything. I'm open to helping with anything. I think you probably the best. You're on here, you know more about this than having held 14 pagers. You probably already have thought about other ways to do this. Yeah.
Right.
So that would be one paper to get rid of. And the other thing, we talked to nursing as far as medicine goes. The pager situation came out of a resident decision, either do pagers or use Epic. They decided on the pager. Not like that's interesting. We were talking about today, maybe a platform for GE that you could do something better. That may be something to have a hospital GE. The other thing,
General Electric.
Yeah, okay.
I really don't think you need a personal pager in this day and age. That's one less expensive, one less clunky thing to carry around.
Yeah. No, those are very valid points. And if you look in the meeting yesterday that we had the vice president for chief informatics officer there and the privacy officer. And I think there are many layers to this as to different areas of the hospital, dead zones, and what can and cannot be sent on Tiger Text. So that's where we are looking at making one uniform system, and it's going to require change of culture from not just the residents and students, but the nursing staff too. But those are very valid points. And then also the cost. Yes. You got it?
So I guess my question just comes from if it's a problem that our phones are not robust enough. Several hospitals actually put in extra antennas and things throughout their other. It might be more cost efficient for us to consider doing that.
Yep.
If you want to use Tiger Text. And then I think the next thing is, how would you get the nurses to be able to do this? So our problem is our nurses don't know who's on, so they just page 5700.
All right.
So how do you educate
Yeah.
the nurses on doing that?
So two things. One, when we talked about the dead zones, we meant that, how do we increase accessibility to the Wi-Fi everywhere? And yeah, antennas is one solution. So thank you for bringing that up. If you notice on our meeting yesterday, we had Miss Pat Eller, who is the Erlanger Medical Staff Manager. So right now, what her role is, she gets the call schedule from all the departments and she manually, one person enters that. And it's entered, and then she's trying to update it if changes occur. So we are requesting to see if we can distribute that and we can have all of that on MION or some other platform where we know exactly who's on call. So that's part of the lean process also. So those are very valuable suggestions that were brought up, absolutely.
Just show of hands, how many people know what AMION is or have been to it, have been to the website? Just about everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. I think part of our problem was when we started this in May, I was on the hook. I was on the hook because I created a change, and then when you create a change, sometimes you have to fix the problems that come out of it. And what I realized with the nursing staff is that there was no communication to them that this existed. And then when there was a communication that it existed, new nursing staff came in 2 months later, or a new floor manager, or in the STAR unit where you don't have one, nobody knew what AMION was on that level with those new people. And so that's part of what we're doing I think that came out of our wellness was that's probably the next thing is AMION. We're trying to transition to it because actually for yourself, like I found myself checking it last night to see if I was on call today. So you get up like kind of higher, you forget when you're on call. But it's really helpful because I could look at who was on call yesterday. Not only that, I could look at who is on call next month when I'm making my monthly call schedule. I think for nursing, it's brilliant because you can go back and you can solve that question of who is on call right now and who am I trying to page. You don't just get a number, you know exactly who it is. It's Epps, and you're trying to reach this kid named Epps, and he's not answering his pager right now. And then you have the attending there too. Or vice versa. Who was it who called me yesterday when I paged them? I don't remember their name to verbal the order. Well, you can go back and look who I called at midnight, and it'd be me. And you say, okay, that's perfect. I don't know, I would show it, but I think everyone here has seen AMION. 40 programs here are using it right now. But the thing about AMION is you can also call and text through it. I don't know if that's a good idea. I haven't figured that out yet. I think it's better to just have a system where you can web page or text page to Tiger Text, but they would know your number, your pager number. And I agree. Why do you need a personal pager number? I need one because when I'm in pre-op and I pre-op a patient, if there's something wrong and I disappear, we don't have lower level staff. We're all just kind of chief, mid-level, intern fellows. And so someone has to get a hold of me just to say, hey, come back. He can't call one of my juniors who's in the OR to come pre-op. So we have to have our own pagers, but that doesn't mean I have to carry around a pager. Maybe it could just be they can contact me through, this is my number on Tiger Text or my contact availability, just hit me up and text me there. I personally like pagers, and this is the funny thing because you've heard me, I'm the biggest proponent for getting rid of them, but I like them because I can sleep at night, my infant can sleep at night who's next to me and it vibrates, I put it in my pocket. But, I want to get rid of it because I've watched the 14 pagers is ridiculous. So I'm highly motivated to get rid of this, even if it means that maybe my kid wakes up more. So that's probably, there are reasons why people would say keep a pager over the Epic system, but I think that's gone now.
Right, so thank you. And the other thing I think has happened is when we sit around the table and representation is there from all the departments and we're talking about mutual problems, the solutions are pretty much found mutually too, and that happened with the call rooms. A question was brought up that cardiology and plastic surgery did not have call rooms, and within discussions of the residents amongst themselves, they were willing to offer that space, and now cardiology has a call room and plastic. So those of you who offered that know who you are, and I want to say thank you again. And that didn't cost the dean's office any money or the hospital any money. I think that collaborative networking and sharing is very, it's wonderful to see that happen, taking care of each other. The other issue that came up was the whole plastic surgery department itself is moving, and the offices are moving off campus. So what would happen to the training program? And that was something that was brought up by the representatives on the Wellbeing and Resident Advisory Board, and I think there've been some plans made to provide the space. Is that correct?
Yeah, but we're going to be orphans soon, so if you see us wandering around and just want to take one of us in for a few minutes, it'd be great. We're working on it. It's a big thing when you have a corporation and a university. That's what's neat about this committee. Something odd came out of it was that we actually, I think, are getting along better, and we're seeing eye to eye, and that it's a collegial environment, and when you need to work together, it shouldn't just be a university versus a hospital system. Like, we're intertwined, and if we do, it's symbiotic. If we do better, if we're happy, if we're well, they will benefit. Their patient care will be better.
I think what these were the words that were lifted up when we had some of our meetings. They felt more empowered. They felt like they had a voice, or you all feel. I think more importantly, I think you're creating a community. I heard the State of Confusion was a good event. How many of you all ended up going to that? Thank you. And again, give ideas to Chris or Olivia or any of us, and they are planning to do that on a regular basis. That's only for the residents. And I think Jamie had more pictures, but she's on night float, and for her well-being, I didn't want to disturb her. So we'll bring those pictures later. But I think, so you've heard the current issues. I think still not everything about them is solved. But in the last 5 or 6 minutes left, is there anything else that you would like us to look at, or any other issues that you think need to be brought to the forefront that need talking about? Yes, Shansi. Patients smoking in the outside the hospital, right? Yeah, I know. And you had actually brought that up earlier. Some others had also. We have pictures where it was in the hall, in the stairwells. And I think that is much better. Coming into the hospital, we brought that up with the hospital, that I think that is a city problem, and the hospital has only so much say on that, but we will readdress it. How close to the hospital was it? Pardon me? Okay. Yeah.
You mean, is that right in front of Starbucks?
Right in the parking garage.
Yeah. if you're in the military, there's a little area called we would call the poop deck, which is right where the ICU waiting room dumps out. The people are constantly smoking. And I smoked for 10 years. If I smell it, I want to vomit now. And so that's a big thing to me. If you guys find that, we'll work on that.
We'll bring that up again. Thank you. Because I think we had the stairwells, and then I had heard about them outside, at the corners of the streets. And for that, we were told that it was a city problem, but I will bring it up now that it's or we will bring it up now. What else? Smoking. Anything else? Yes, sir.
You give a plug to the House staff party and its importance.
Yes. You want to say something? Who's on the House Staff Association? Yeah, anybody knows more about the House Staff Party than what Olivia sent us? So the House Staff Party is on 15th of December at the Golf and Country Club. And it's important that you all attend and participate. I think there is a video that is needed from each program. And I'm pulling up her email so that I can read exactly what. And she's on nights too. That's why she's not here.
Is Olivia?
Olivia's
on nights. Nico's doing his board exam right now, but he'll get back on Wednesday. Nico's one of my favorite people, but he's a big party guy, big party planner, knows what he's doing. So if you have any ideas for it too, or suggestions for how to make the night go smoother or more fun, let us know. Just find Nico. If y'all don't know him, I'll introduce you to him.
It's at the Chattanooga Golf and Country Club on Saturday, December 15th at 6:30. Black tie attire, a band, full dinner, buffet, and open bar.
What's the cost for it?
I think only for attendings. That's what
Really?
the cost is. $150 per couple for attendings. And 8 and yeah. So that you're right. So and y'all are with the house staff dues. There's no separate.
It's
cost
just
for it.
it's the dues. Okay.
And you make your check to the University House Staff Association. And we can resend this email. Did you all get the email?
What's up, Dr. Four? Sir.
In the past, the practice has been to bring a toy for Toys for Tots, but this year apparently they've changed and they want a children's book. Probably unwrapped.
It's not mentioned. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can I remind everybody that the university's alumni association and regional development office out of Memphis is wanting to say thank you to all of our residents and faculty. Day after tomorrow, Thursday, 15th of this month, I think between 11:30 in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a grab and go lunch. You just stop by, they'll say thank you, and all you have to, I would ask that you smile and say thank you, but you can leave after that. They're just wanting to say how much they appreciate everything you do for our community, for the state, for the University of Tennessee, and say thanks. It's really nice. You should have gotten at least 2 emails. I've asked your departments to let me know about how many of you will be coming. They've gotten very few RSVPs. There's an individual link that you're supposed to send. But if you're going, if you want to email me or email your coordinator, which is probably smarter, and then I just get numbers from them, I'd appreciate it. I haven't heard back from everybody. But it's day after tomorrow. Free lunch, no park twice, okay?
Anybody got?
Also, we are trying to find out whether or not you get the 10% Erlanger employee discount when you swipe your meal cards. Jim Duraney, the administrator for support services, thinks that you should get it. He thinks that you are getting it. I'm just not positive, and I have not heard back from him. I checked right before the meeting. I still haven't heard back, but I will keep asking. And if you aren't getting the 10% when you swipe your card, we're going to try to make sure that that happens, okay? It's, well, 10% discount is about a wash for taxes in Tennessee. Okay, so y'all can keep it. Okay, I'll resident or fellow badge on or medical students, if you're swiping, you should still get that discount. So you shouldn't have to tell them a cost, okay? Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you all. And again, we'll send a list of all the representatives that we have thus far. And if there are any other issues, you can tell them, or you can always email us, myself, Pam, and we will try to tackle that and appreciate your creative solutions too. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Matthew.
I'll also email the information from Dr. Wooten about the hospital's hallway boarding initiative.